not always, but by a long way, can be scientifically proved, and that can't.
Well, is that an advantage to you, you say?
Yes, it is.
It would make that more convincing because
Yes.
you can actually trace the DNA,
Yes.
or you can trace the... Okay. So would that be a complete answer then? You don't really need that?
Well,
No,
I
you're not
envy
willing to
people.
say that?
You say what you
I envy people
Yes, I do.
who have that. They've got something I haven't
Yes.
got, and it brings them advantages and
Yeah.
comfort and.
The peace.
And yet you say it would be comforting, but you wouldn't be able to believe it,
No.
really, because you think that's just a fairy tale and that's scientifically provable. Any other views? Yes.
well, we
yeah.
think that it's necessary to go the Darwinian way, without doubt. But I do not believe that means you cannot have a spirit, you can't have a soul, you cannot have, what was the other thing you said? I can't remember what it was. But it seems to me that you can have all these things, and animals can have them as well.
So if you had a spirit, who created that? Was that part of the creation that came about through the evolution of mankind? Where's that come from?
No, the
A
two have to
spirit.
stand separate.
A spirit is interesting.
But they can be
A
different
spirit.
axes, as it were,
I
can't
don't
they?
think they have to stand separate at all.
Right, Aggie, can you say why not?
Not you.
So why not?
Aggie says you don't think it stands
Because-
separate.
Because you can trace the creation of, you can create a workable story for the creation of energy and matter, but the more you think about energy and matter, the more you realize that information is equally as important, but also could be traced back to a finite beginning and is doing the energy matter growing thing, because information does grow, because if you take any happening that happens, create in the same way as it pushes the arrow of time, pushes the collection of information. And if you've got information and the organisation of life which we've agreed that we can find a scientific basis for, then you have consciousness, and it doesn't necessarily need a supreme being to have created itself.
I think I lost you a bit. I thought you were saying that you believed there was a first consciousness which created all the evolutionary pattern that then followed. But that's not what you were saying, was it?
The way that we have agreed a story which traces back everything to an event 13.5 billion years ago doesn't for me say that we could not have got consciousness from that. I don't think consciousness and spirit has to have come from something else. I just think we don't yet know the mechanism.
Broadly speaking, I stand corrected by Aggie.
Okay, wonderful.
No,
That's
We
an
all feel
evolution.
so much to look
Man
down on
corrected
it.
by woman is an evolution. Yeah.
Well, consciousness and awareness and the associated models like the soul and the spirit, they're all, to my mind, they're emergent complexity from the simple building blocks of
Yeah. So this is the idea
yeah.
that the higher mental faculties are a late comer to the scene. It didn't begin at
so
that's that one really.
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
and effectively the idea of a something must have created us because everything is so perfectly set up for us. It's perfectly set up for us because we have evolved into this environment which was already there. It wasn't created around us because we're this shape. It's like the puddle is perfectly matched to the hole it's in, so therefore the hole must have been made specifically for the puddle.
Yes, that's a very interesting way of putting it. Thank you. Yes.
I might be interested on Richard, giving you a minute to think about it. Richard's interesting talk earlier about the development from the spinal cord into higher functioning brain function. Was there a point, I suppose my question is, was there a point at which we became this sentient business? Yeah. What's your view on being sentient? And then you could argue, if once you're sentient and you understand that you are existing, isn't that the point at which we start to conceive lovely type things.
That's
What's your
it's
view on
very
it?
contentious point, isn't it? Because some people would say that embryos in the womb are sentient, that animals are sentient. Some people even say that plants are sentient. So that is really quite a debatable
I agree.
point.
I've read a book on Supernature, which sort of
Yeah.
talks about that. But which you know more about this than I do. Is there a connection between becoming sentient, given our physiology, and how that might relate to needing a god?
I read
Some
something, I read something about
So there is certainly some research that goes into lots of kind of at what point do we become sentient as such, what kind of awareness dolphins have in mirrors of their self as such, and those sorts of things. In a way, that's trying to then assemble evidence to prove a theory. So I would probably turn around the other side and say, the fact that we do have sentience, as far as we know, we don't definitively know that other organisms on other planets don't have sentience or anything else. So the question might be the other way around of the fact that we do have sentience, what do we choose to do with that, and what is our contribution to the overall evolutionary spirit God system because we have that? So it's maybe not the answer that you want.
That's okay. That gives me food for thought.
Any other points just on these sort of two paradigms?
I have a direct response to the question asked. Is that I did read somewhere. I would have to find out where. It might have been the Meme Machine by Susan Blackwell. That it turns out that once a brain reaches a particular size and particular complexity, which can, to a certain extent, be measured, and babies don't have that size, but children slightly older do. That at that point of complexity, sentience comes into existence purely because of that emergent complexity that I alluded to earlier.
Well, one of the things about the complexity, and this is something, it's a bit late date to throw this in, it's a huge topic in itself, is if we're just going with this one, is it possible to talk about morality? Is it possible that a creature that's just grown up with a sort of bestial past can actually be a moral creature? Or is it necessary to have that morality invested in it, infused in it by a divine essence, as it were?
Well, humanists manage it.
And humanists manage it. And this is always an interesting point, that when you have a world disaster, a famine, and people are asked to support the needy, millions of people will do this. They will send money and help who do not regard themselves as religious. So that's a very strong humanist argument for saying, there does not need to be a religious component in supposedly religious behaviour. That's also an ongoing debate.
I
Yes.
think that the next stage on this man will be a smaller man or woman or person,
Yeah.
crouching forward with a screen in front of him, as it were, and not so much opposition in the fingers. We don't need to see ourselves from trees any longer, and we will have a more crouching position generally. I think it will go down again to the previous
Yes.
one, really.
Well, arguably, the screen has already taken the place of that for many people. Anybody else want to say anything? Yes.
Well, yes, we need the larger scheme. I've come to think of the creation or creator, but we are in the presence of an agency which creates universes in the plural. We happen to be living in one of them, which has generated consciousness. But this is only part of a much wider creative process, and something like Blake's God is at least the first sort of approximation to it. But to be conscious is to have the sense that is to be oneself a demonstration that there is something rather than nothing, which is one of the basic human questions. That I've become, we're sitting in Norman Glaser's study where in 1956 I first encountered his version of Darwinism, I should say, which I knew nothing of beforehand. So yes, in general I am accepting the whole tidings of modern science. I say to myself virtually every day, 13.73 billion years ago was round about the original foundation creation of this
Yes.
particular universe,
Yeah.
and if you have conscious creatures in it, at least that creates the time, and this universe has a enormously long, limited life, and human beings behave so poorly that they throw away their chances of really extended existence.
And as you say, this is now being widely taken up.
But yes, there is a continuous creationary process of universes,
Yes.
which in some way or other is in the presence of consciousness or a consciousness generating agency. And this, you're just sort of thinking in wholeness, and everything is interconnected. You know, this is a sufficient.
But what we think of as
this is sufficient. This is a sufficient goodness for me. Thank you.
yes, thank you. What we think of as consciousness may be the limit of our ability to imagine consciousness. It may well not be all that is possible. I just want to end by saying I think the most wonderful thing is that we don't know. It's the not knowing that's so exciting and so potentially limitless.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say.
Yeah.